Good morning to our members across North America, and a very warm good evening to our colleagues joining us from India. Welcome to today's webinar, Forensic Audit and Credit Rating, Strengthening Financial Integrity and Trust for the Members in Industry and Business. This event is a collaborative effort between members in Industry and Business Committee, ICAI India, and the Michigan chapter of ICAI USA. As professionals in a global economy, the demand for transparency and rigorous financial oversight has never been higher. Today, we aim to demystify the dynamics of credit assessment and the precision of forensic investigations. Now, I would like to invite Dr. C. Anuj Goyal, Chairman of the Members in Industry and Business Committee, to deliver the keynote address and set the stage for the webinar. A brief introduction for Dr. C.A. Goyal is as follows. C.A. Dr. Anuj Goyal, Central Council member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, has over 30 years of experience and has made significant contributions to the profession. With his extraordinary tenure of 20 years in Central Council, he has held key leadership roles, including chairman of regional and central committees, and currently serves as the chairman of the Members in Industry and Business Committee. A highly qualified professional with designations such as Chartered Accountant, Company Secretary, Cost and Management Accountant, LLB, MCOM, PhD, DISA, DIRM, he has contributed extensively to research, publications, and professional developments initiatives. Over to you, Dr. Goyal.
Thank you very much, CA Priya Goyal ji, our very prominent member of the Michigan chapter. We are having the presence of the chairperson, Michigan chapter, CA Purnima Chakka ma'am. She is very active, and very recently we had one more webinar in which Michigan chapter played a very active role. So thank you very much. And of course, we are having CA Anita Suneja ji, our Honorable Secretary of Committee for Members in Industry and Business, being very active and architect of all the webinars. Every week we are having one or more webinar. So thank you, Anita ji. And we are having very prominent resource persons, our speakers, Revati Kastur ma'am and Pavitra Chandramoli ma'am. So I welcome on behalf of ICI and the Committee for Members in Industry and Business and all the respected delegates from each and every part of Bharat and outside Bharat. We are having the global presence, and our members in industry and business are there everywhere. So I welcome all of you on behalf of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and Committee for Members in Industry and Business. Our Vice Chairperson, very active and dynamic Central Council member from Mumbai, Preeti Savla ma'am, couldn't join, but this is the brainchild of Preeti Savla ma'am and Anita Suneja ji, who have webinar every week. So we are really grateful, really indebted to both of them for this great initiative. And today we are having this webinar on topic forensic audit and credit rating, strengthening financial integrity and trust for members in industry and business. And you must be very well aware, friends, that we represent around 5 lakh members and 30 lakh students. Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is the largest accounting body of the world. And more than 60% of our members now are the part of the industry and business. So around 3 lakh chartered accountants are now contributing for the development of trade and industry in each and every part of world. And as far as the newly qualified chartered accountants are concerned, close to 80 to 85% chartered accountants are going to industry. So there is great demand of the chartered accountants in industry, and particularly in other parts of the world, outside world, maybe 95% chartered accountant, maybe more than 95% chartered accountants are joining industry. And you are very well aware they can join industry only when there is a great demand and the contribution from their side. I am in Australia today, and you will be very happy to know that the chartered accountants in Australia are respected like anything, and are generating revenue not only for themselves but also for the country, like anything. And today was the annual function of the chapter, Melbourne chapter, and the president ICI was there. The deputy president of the International Federation of Accountants was there. The local member of parliament, the minister was there. The consul general of India in Melbourne was there. So this is the capacity of the members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India in other parts of the world. We look forward to have some physical program at Michigan chapter very soon. And all the members who are live with us, I will request all of you to be very active. You are very well aware that Committee for Members, Industry and Business do form the industry specific study circles, where there are 20 or 25 members in any organization, in any company, in any industry, in any part of the world. We can very well have the industry CP study circle. All the relevant details we will be sending to all the members who are into industry, and to all the CP chapters in India, outside India, so that we can very well go ahead with this wonderful opportunity to have the footprints of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India in each and every part of the world, in each and every industry. And we can very well have the CP programs, physical programs as well as virtual programs through these industry specific CP study circles. And Committee for Members, Industry and Business, day in, day out, is ready to provide any support to contribute for the members in industry in all those CP study circles. Friends, we must be very well aware that ICI through CMIB is outreaching to the members in industry and business through various initiatives, whether it is the CFO forums, in which we want to see that how our newly qualified chartered accountants, our younger generation of chartered accountants, can be motivated, can be handholded through these CFO forums. And we do invite best of the key managerial personals as the panelists in these CFO forums, and the delegates are the members in industry. And we want to see that how our members in industry are motivated to go to the next level, whether it is CFO, whether it is CEO, whether it is CMD. You will be very happy to know that my chartered accountant is getting the opportunities, contributing at each and every level. The CMD of GAL India Limited was a chartered accountant, C. Sandeep Gupta ji. And you are very well aware that CMD of Aditya Birla Group is CA Kumar Mangalam Birla, a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. The CFO of Tesla, Weber Taneja, is a chartered accountant and is drawing around 2,000 crores per annum. A chartered accountant, maybe of the age of 50 years or so. So my chartered accountant is having that capacity to generate revenue for the respective trade and industry, to generate revenue for themselves, and to contribute for the development of the respective economies of the country where they are working. The only thing which is required is to exploit their capabilities, how we can have the skill enrichment of these chartered accountants in each and every part of the world. So our CP chapters are playing very, very active role. And we'll request that if we will be having the CP study circles, through those CP study circles also, we'll try to build the capacity of the chartered accountants in industry in each and every part of the world. Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, you are very well aware, are trying to see that how my chartered accountants can have the best of the knowledge of the technology, how my chartered accountant can have the expert knowledge of AI. My more than 1 lakh chartered accountants have already gone through the certificate course on AI, and Institute of Chartered Accountants of India is the AI capital of the accountancy profession, and we are the leader. and we want to see that how, with the help and support of the overseas chapters, the industry specific CP study circles, how we can build the capacity of my chartered accountants who are there in other parts of the world. We will try to see that how we can organize, Anita ji, the CFO forums in other parts of the world. If need be, our leadership, the president, vice president, the chairman committee for members, industry and business can join you virtually. Modi ji has already communicated that we should use the technology in the best possible manner, and we should try to avoid the foreign travel. So, but we want to show to outside world that without moving physically, with the help of technology, how the members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India can be handled. You can organize physical programs at your respective places. You can organize even the virtual programs. Virtual CFO meet also we can try to organize with the help and support of various overseas chapters. And in India, day in day out, we are having one or more CFO forum. But we want to see that how we can have the CFO forum in each and every part of the world to outreach to the members in industry and to build the capacity in the best possible manner. So I once again welcome our both the speakers, Revati Kasturji, Pavitra Chandamoli ji, and of course the chairperson Purnima Chakka ji and of the Michigan chapter, and C. A. Priya Goyal ji, a very very active member of the Michigan chapter, for their efforts in coordinating this session. And I'm very happy that in thousand of numbers, the participants are there with us. I will request all the participants to be very active, and we can very well raise the questions, and I will request to the resource persons to answer the query of the honorable delegates, so that others can also be benefited out of those queries and their response. So once again, I welcome all our honorable members on behalf of ICAI and on behalf of the Committee for Members in Industry and Business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CA Dr. Goyal, for insightful keynote address. We are now moving on to our main discourse segment. We have two distinguished experts with us today to lead these critical discussions. Revati Kasturi, she is currently the CEO of CareEdge Global. Revati is an award-winning and rank holder, chartered accountant and cost accountant with over 25 years of expertise in ratings, research, and leadership. She was recently recognized among India's top 100 women in finance. Pavitra Chandramoli, she is a senior manager in Deloitte Forensic Practice across North America. Pavitra is a CPA, CFE, and CMA who specializes in fraud risk management and high-stake investigations for both public and private sector clients. Let's begin with segment one. Revati, let's start the broader picture. Credit ratings are often the first line of defense in maintaining market trust.
Yes, Priya.
So, what is the role of credit rating agency in financial ecosystem and what ratings are used for?
Okay, so firstly, really glad to be on this panel and happy to kind of connect to my fellow chartered accountants today all across the world. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are placed today. So typically, credit rating is not a new concept. It's a concept which is more than 100 years old internationally. In India, it started about 40 years ago. If you ask the classical definition of credit rating, it is the assessment of the ability and willingness of a borrower to pay on of a issuer to pay the money on time. So essentially, it depends on the amount to be paid and the timeliness of the amount to be paid. Both are taken into consideration. So while this appears to be a very siloed definition, we will get into what are the aspects that we look at when we do credit rating a little later. But answer your question, what is the role of a credit rating agency? Largely, it is to reduce the information asymmetry that is there for the investors whenever they want to invest in any debt related security or give a loan or any of such things, so that they have a transparent availability of a third party evaluated opinion on the ability of the borrower to pay. And that lends a lot of credibility to the reliability of the data which is getting provided to the investor community. It is used widely by regulators and investors, lenders in different formats. So, if I, let's say, look at the regulators, how are the regulators using credit rating? As you know, there are Basel regulations under which there is a capital adequacy framework, which defines how do banks evaluate or calculate calculate risk under the standardized approach. And under the standardized approach, the bank, in order to calculate the risk-weighted capital, have to rely on ratings given by external credit rating agencies, which are accredited by the respective banking sector regulator in that country. So, for example, the banking sector regulator in India is the Reserve Bank of India. So, the Reserve Bank of India gives accreditations to the rating agencies whose ratings can be used by banks for the purpose of capital risk weighting of their assets. This is, the first and the primary use, which is typically there, but regulators use it for a lot other different purposes also. For example, when they are evaluating the asset quality of a banking system, they are able to assess the asset quality, because asset quality can be divided into different rating buckets depending on what is the rating of the counterparty to whom the bank has lent. So it adds a layer of transparency to evaluation of the asset quality. In India, RBI has also used ratings for the resolution plans, which can go further under the IBC code. So RBI introduced something which is known as resolution plan ratings, where they had defined a scale, and under that scale, if the rating for the resolution plan is above a certain level, only then the resolution plan can be accepted by the bank and it can go ahead. So this is another use of rating which has been done by the regulator. Other than that, SEBI in India also use rating agencies for the purpose of due diligence, like any IPO which comes into the market. There are always objectives defined under the IPO or rights issue or follow on public offer or QIP or any such fundraising. Now, SEBI has very recently, about 2 years back, come out with a framework wherein you require the monitoring of the issue proceeds, whether or not they are used as per the objects of the issue from a credit rating agency. So this is another way in which credit ratings are used by regulators. Now, if you move to how credit ratings are used by investors, then definitely it adds as an additional layer of tool which they can help an external validation of their internal assessment. So obviously investors do their internal assessments whenever they pick up any credit, but if there is an external rating, it aids them in their decision making. A lot of investors use rating as a gating criteria, that they will only invest in investment grade papers, and investment grade for a rating agency is typically all over the world triple B minus and above. So they use it as a gating criteria, saying that above a certain rating only I will put in the money, below a certain rating I will not put. They also use credit rating for the purpose of pricing. So they say that I will give a particular pricing for a company in a particular rating category. Typically what happens is that rating really simplifies the understanding of the investor towards the credit risk, because you have a whole lot of papers which get generated, and you have your annual report, then you have exchange filings, you have operational parameters and all of that. Now all of that have to be crunched and they have to be understood. So typically a rating analyst does all of that and gives you a symbol, and the symbol has a definition, so it's we kind of make it simple for the investors to understand the credit risk associated with a particular company or bond or whatever that you are investing in. So that's really the role of a credit rating agency internationally, anywhere in the world.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so Reftiji, I have a follow-up question. As a credit rating agency, do you assess only financial data or do you look for other indicators?
Yeah, so again, this is a probably a myth that, as a rating agency, we only look at financial data. So the rating framework, while, we comment on a very specific instance of whether the company will be able to pay the installment that of the loan on time or not. That's a very specific thing that we comment on, right? However, this is dependent on a lot of factors, and therefore, as a framework for credit rating, we have. So I'll talk about, different types of credit rating a little later. But as a framework, we have five parameters that we typically use, financial being one of them, business risk or operational risk being the other, project management being the third, if at all there is a project which the company is doing, then management evaluation or analysis. Now, this is something which really cannot be quantified, and this is essentially the most toughest part of assessment when you do a credit rating for a company. But management risk has to be baked in and built in the assessment. And there is obviously then the industry risk, which industry does the company belong to? What are the is the industry highly regulated, or it is a free market industry? Is the industry a commodity industry, or is it a very niche sector where, so whether it is a price taker or it is a price giver, whether it is exposed to international markets or it is not exposed to international markets. So all of this impact the business of the company. And, a rating is not something which is based on past. Like, you may have done excellent in the past, but tomorrow, if the industry structure changes, and it is changing, for example, you had cameras earlier. We used to all use cameras to take pictures.
Yeah.
And then there used to be these films, used to print them and all of that. Do you do it any longer? It's no longer there, right? So now you all use phones. You can take how many ever photos you want. Everything is in digital, media. So it's an industry which has been completely wiped off, right? Significantly wiped off. I'm not say completely. There are still people who use cameras for specialized photography and all, but not the general public. Like you and me typically will not do that, right? So that's how industry risk really plays out. Or you had these CDs earlier. All of us used to really use CDs or floppy disk, or now you no longer use them, right? So that's how industry risk plays out. So, when you're talking about credit rating, it's all about the future. It is not about the past. So I definitely don't have a crystal ball to glaze at what's going to happen in future. But what we do is that we do a considered assessment of, what's going to be the any structural shift in the industry, or any business risk, which will emerge. What is the quality of the management? Wherein, when you say a quality of the management, is the management really aggressive? Are they prone to taking aggressive calls, or are they conservative? So they will just complete one project and take another, or they will say, I'll take a large project and I'm very confident and I'll do it. So it's like that. So that's how, there are different parameters that we use for doing credit rating. Financial, again, as I said, being one of the parameters.
Yeah, thank you. So you told us that their credit ratings are across the world. And so what's the difference between ratings assigned by different rating agencies?
Yeah, so typically, as I said, the industry started about more than 100 years ago in the United States of America, where you have large rating agencies. And then there were rating agencies which kind of emerged across different markets. So we have fundamentally two types of ratings. One is the international rating, and second is the domestic rating. When I say an international rating, for example, let's say I take a case of India, because we have a lot of Indian chartered accountants also on this forum. So, when a domestic rating agency, which is registered with the capital market regulator and the banking regulator in, let's say, India, does ratings, at that point of time, for us, the government of India becomes the primary credit, the most safe asset. So, like, let's say a T-bill or a government bond is the safest asset, right? So, the government of India for us becomes a AAA. And then we kind of scale down all the corporate credits in that AAA to D band. Rating is a relative. So I'm going to place all these guys across, this band of AAA, AA, single A, triple B, double B, single B, C, and D. The government of India becomes AAA because it is a power to print currency, right? That's how domestic rating agencies work. But so, for example, for care ratings, Government of India will be AAA. A lot of strategically important public sector undertakings for the government will therefore derive their rating from the government's rating, which is AAA. And rating methodology is another big, topic of discussion. I'm sure we'll not be able to cover it right now. I would encourage you to go through the websites of rating agencies to understand how we do our ratings. There's a whole lot of literature on the methodology benchmarks that we really put out in the public domain. This is one type of rating. There is a domestic rating where the home country is at the highest level, the government of the home country, and then you kind of have companies within. But when I do rating as Carriage Global IFSC Limited, which is an entity that we have started in Gift City, and which is the first international credit rating agency from the global south. For Carriage Global IFSC Limited, when we do ratings, we do international scale ratings, which means that I first do country rating and then I do a company within a country rating. And typically, a company within a country would generally have the country rating as a ceiling. So, Carriage Global IFSC Limited has rated the Government of India triple B plus. Okay, so that's the difference, So when I talk about international ratings, India's rating is a triple B plus, and all the companies within the country, whenever they are doing any foreign currency issuances, so when there are global investors who want to put, then the country risk comes into play, and therefore most of the companies in the country, unless and otherwise, they are eligible for rating beyond sovereign, which is another concept, will typically be rested or have a ceiling of triple B plus. But on a domestic scale, they might have a double A or a triple A rating also. So that's really the difference. So, for example, if I look at, let's say, Reliance Industries, it has a triple A rating on a domestic scale, but some international rating agencies rate it triple B plus or A minus on an international scale. So that's really the difference between a domestic scale and an international scale rating. And we are proud that we are the first agency from India who also offers international scale rating. So Indian corporates really don't have to go to global rating agencies to get an international scale rating. Now we started in October 2024. So that's
Yeah,
really, where it is.
that's very good. So while credit ratings provide a forward pulse of trust, we must also look the tools to look backward and ensure that trust was well placed. So this brings us to our second segment. Pavitra, forensic audit is where the art of investigation meets the science of accounting. Let's dive into some of the technical complexities.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So, statutory audits provide reasonable assurance based on samples, but forensic audit is designed to deliver a reconstruction of facts. What's the difference between audit and forensic audit?
Yeah, that's a question that I always get asked from a lot of folks. I'll start off by saying, good morning, good evening to all the participants from, the west and the eastern sides of the world, and I'm very happy to be here. So let's take a little step back and what's difference between audit and forensic audit, right? And I often describe the difference as more of a difference in purpose and mindset, right? So when we think about statutory audit, and most of the chartered accountants here, we all know, right? So it's fundamentally about providing confidence, like a reasonable assurance, and it answers a question: can stakeholders rely on the financial statements? And audit is kind of a structured, a standardized, and a designed way to operate within define boundaries like materiality and timelines, right? So, but when we think about forensic audit, it often begins where assurance cannot be provided, or in situations it may not impact an audit opinion, but still it raises important questions related to, what is the truth behind this. So a forensic audit or investigation, it is more about uncovering and reconstructing the facts and the truth. And forensic audit, it often follows transactions, communications, and the behaviors wherever they lead until the facts come together into a coherent narrative, right? So when we think about forensic audit, it goes beyond testing documents and controls. It dives deep into questions such as who did this? Why did they do it? How was this done? When did this happen? And ultimately, how all of these fit into a potential intentional act to deceive for personal or for a personal benefit, or to harm someone, which in most cases could be like organizations or stakeholders associated. And the other thing that I also see as a difference between audit and forensic audit is in terms of materiality, right? So we have materiality that applies in an audit situation, but there is no concept of materiality when it comes to fraud, because there is an issue, something has happened. So you're going um, underneath that, and there is the intent that we are looking at, and not essentially what is just the volume of or the value associated with it. The other thing that I like to describe forensic audit as, it's like putting the pieces of puzzle together, right? And you have to be able to tell the story that can withstand scrutiny from regulators, board, law enforcement, and sometimes even in the courtroom, right? So when you conduct a forensic audit, therefore, we go beyond what is on the surface. We go under, we examine emails, messages, social media, bank account trails, and often we also conduct interviews. And you put all these different information together to build that full picture. So in many ways, if I think about this, an audit can be like a story presented by the management to ensure that the story presented by the management holds together, whereas forensic audit is about rebuilding that story itself. Sometimes it's like it's in fragments, there are inconsistencies. There are inconsistencies because there is a concealment, right? And it is deliberate, it is purposeful. So you put all of those together to rebuild the story of what that means and to be able to tell that. So it is the intent that drives everything. And Revati ma'am was talking about when she was talking about credit rating, it's forward looking. There's like so many different things that you consider. So in a forensic audit situation, it's obviously backward looking, but still there are so many different pieces to consider to be able to say, okay, what has gone wrong in with respect to a particular allegation of fraud, or it could be in some cases, like it can just be there is no intent behind it. Like, think about the social engineering scams that are happening, where a fraudster is sending out an email and somebody within the finance department gets ticked on that email and they make a payment to a fraudster, right? In those situations, there may not be intent, but unless you go behind the screens and find out what has happened, was there a motive or were they just a victim of fraud? So so all the collection of details will tell that whether there was an intent behind it or whether there was, that somebody was a victim to it, right? So that's kind of where I see, there's a difference between audit and a forensic audit.
Yeah, so we have a follow-up question. Beyond the accounting foundation, what is the most critical non-financial skill a forensic auditor must have to be a credible guardian of integrity? Also, are there any specific certifications that are now considered essential for those wanting to specialize in this field?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And when I think about non-financial skills, what comes to mind right away is like, think about like professional skepticism, curiosity or investigative mindset, which we call as critical thinking, basically. And then the third skill that comes to mind is like interviewing or communication skills. And last but not the least, and this is like the most important, like report writing, right? So I'll unpack this a little bit and talk about, very briefly about each of these non-financial skills. The first one that I pointed about professional skepticism, that also applies to the auditor. So I would not go deeper into that. But I'll talk about the other three skills. So the the second one that I pointed, which is the curiosity or the investigative mindset. Uh, Typically what happens in forensic audit is we come across, as I was saying, we look at so many different sources of information, and oftentimes what happens is there are inconsistencies between these different sources. And for a forensic auditor, it is important for them to know how to connect the dots, right? Because somebody said something, but the document is saying something. You need to be able to connect the dots and identify gaps, contradictions that require further investigation. Okay, if they don't connect, what am I supposed to do next? Where can I go next? Because you're just going further and further down to be able to fully resolve for a particular issue at hand, right? So the ability to critically think and follow through every single evidence that you're getting until you get to the bottom of it is very important. And that we call that as an investigative mindset or a curiosity mindset. That's very important for forensic auditors. The second thing that the other non-financial skill is interviewing or communication skills. So forensic auditors, they conduct so many different types of interviews as they go through the entire life cycle of an investigation. It can start off with information gathering. You just need to gather information. And then there is a fact-finding interview. And sometimes there can be probing interviews, targeted interviews. And at the end, when we need to sit in front of the person who has alleged to have committed a fraud, there might be situations where we need to do confrontational interviews as well. So, and this is a real skill in terms of how these different interviews are conducted. Sometimes it is developed through experience on the job. Sometimes you need training, which could be provided through different bodies or by the employer themselves, right? So during these interactions, what is also essential and what we also do is we go beyond just the verbal conversation, right? So we take note of the body language, the behavioral cues, right? So noting all of that down is also key, and that's something that a forensic auditor develops. The third part is the report writing, and I would emphasize more and more on this because even the strongest of investigations can lose impact if the findings cannot be communicated effectively. right? So the ability to clearly articulate facts, maintain neutrality, because in audit, there is opinion. In forensic audit, we don't provide opinions. We just present facts, right? So those facts have to be neutral. That is going to be important. Any weak report can undermine all the investigation efforts that might have gone into that process. So those are the essential skills that I that come to mind on top of mind. There are other little things, but these are the key. In terms of certifications, let me so CPA is or CA is the accounting foundation is critical, right? And then we also sometimes have forensic investigators who are lawyers who have like undergraduation in criminology and so on and so forth. When it comes to a globally recognized designation, there are a few designations that are offered, like the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. They offer a globally recognized designation called as a Certified Fraud Examiner. And then there are also jurisdictions that offer forensic specialization for their own region or country. For example, in Canada, the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada, they offer the Certified in Financial Forensics as a designation. CAMS, Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialist, is now starting to pick up as a globally recognized designation for those who want to focus more specifically in the anti-money laundering space. So yeah, so there are a few globally recognized designations, but then what I would say is these designations are not sufficient. Like, and what builds credibility for a forensic investigator is to get that real experience in investigations and be able to bring in those skills that I just talked about.
Yeah, that was good. So for CA and CPAs and leadership roles, how do you proactively bring fraud risk to the forefront of senior management to strengthen integrity before a crisis hits?
Yeah, 100%. I'm starting to shift my focus a little bit between, we all think about forensics as only the when crisis hits, right? And
Yes.
forensic investigations are backward looking, but then I have started spending more of my time on how can you put fraud in front of the senior management or board and call it as a fraud governance, right? And there are a few ways in which I think about this. So at the end of the day, organizations are in business to create value, right? So naturally, fraud is not going to be top priority for any senior management. But let's not forget, organizations do actively manage other business risks, right? So that's why there is enterprise risk management, where they consider
Mm.
operational, enterprise, and reputational risk for organizations, right? So when the senior management is talking about all the other types of risks, I have a question. So, why would fraud risk be ignored or treated differently? Right. So, and to
Mm.
add on to that, if an organization finds itself in the news due to a fraud incident, no governance body or board is going to be satisfied uh, or be happy with that report, right, on the media. And then the question to the senior management would be, okay, what happened? And if the senior management says, no, we were compliant, I don't think the board or a governance body would be satisfied with that, right? Right. And their
Yeah.
expectation would have always been, could this have been anticipated or prevented? Right. And this is why I think leaders need to move beyond asking, are we compliant? To where are we vulnerable and how would we know that? And there are so many practical ways in which it can be easily embedded into that you know the fraud governance of the entire organization. uh, I will keep it short just in interest of time, but the only thing that I really want to mention is a team is as strong as its leadership, right? And an
Yes.
organization takes its cues from their leadership. So the tone at the top has to be clear in terms of what their preference is for an ethical culture. They have to promote a safe and a speak up environment, and they need to prioritize fraud risk and embed that into the overall organizational governance, and not look fraud as just a taboo. Oh, we are fully foolproof against fraud. No organization is foolproof against fraud. So I'll leave it at that, because I can just go on with this.
Yeah, no, that was very nice. So, yeah, we can start with the question answers now. Like, we have a lot of questions coming up right now. And let me start with the first question. What is the role of credit rating agency in the financial ecosystem, and what ratings are used for? This is for Revti.
I think I answered this, right? This is the first question probably that you asked, Priya.
Yeah. So what are the financial ratios? What financial ratios are most important for a company's credit rating? The ratios are the same for USA and India?
Yeah. So, yeah, as I said, typically financial numbers are just one part of the story. But
Yeah.
if somebody wants to know what financial ratios are important, typically they are mostly the leverage and the coverage ratios. Obviously, the profitability ratios are very important too. But typically, how they translate into how they connect with the capital structure of the company, and therefore the interest cover, the debt service cover, the repayments, which are like near-term repayments, less than 1 year, are some financial numbers that definitely we would look at. But apart from that, as I said, ratios are only one part of the entire assessment. It is very important that we understand, credit rating to be a more holistic exercise than only financial ratios. And let's say, I'll give you an example of, let's say, a red flag
Hmm.
indicator that we would have. Pavitra spoke about, fraud management
Fraud.
in,
Yes.
and why is that not a very important aspect of
Yeah.
business risk? And she's absolutely right. So, for example, if we say there are frequent changes in management, every year the CFO is leaving, the
Yeah.
organization, and every second year there is a big reshuffle in the organization which is happening. That's a red flag for a
Hmm.
credit rating agency. Or if I let's say, there are complex structures that the company has. There's a whole core, there is a opco beneath it, that there are several other opcos beneath it. So there's a very complex structure. You don't know how the funds are moving within the ecosystem, and that becomes a red flag per se for a credit rating agency. So I can go on the red flags which we consider, but
Yeah.
just to give a few examples. So financial ratios, essentially it's leverage and coverage ratios, and how
Hmm.
those ratios are built, what is behind those ratios is more important than the number itself.
Yeah. So again, we have another one for you. And what are the myths of credit ratings in India and versus USA?
So the myth of a credit rating agency is that rating is a guarantee. Sorry, rating is a guarantee. Rating is not a guarantee. Typically, a rating agency starts its work after the audited accounts are available. So actually, the first line of defense are my members in industry who are auditors. If they do, a fabulous job of reporting with transparency and identifying, what are the issues with the management and correcting them in their reporting framework, then half the job for me gets easy. I don't have to really, because rating is largely trust but verify. It is not doubt and investigate as a tenet. Okay, so if at all there are what to say, fabricated accounts which are presented, which are audited and which are present, it's very difficult as a rating agency because if I look at the AAA defaults all across the world, whether it is US or India, then they'll be less than 0.01%. Which means I am not expecting a AAA company to go into default, and therefore I don't get into the forensic side of it to go and say whether the accounts are correct, whether the NPA numbers are correct or they are not correct. Okay, I need to start, say, assuming that these are right. But of course, as I said, we look at some red flag indicators too. The smell test is what becomes very important,
Hmm.
and we apply that when we do credit ratings.
Credit
But there is
ratings.
a myth that
Hmm.
rating is a guarantee. It's not.
Okay, so we have for Pavitra as well. If a finance director of a company left and a lot of bank payments were done which are suspicious, how do you deal with it?
Okay, so that's like a standard situation where red flags start to arise, and we so sometimes what happens is and I want to speak to this a little bit more in terms of how even audit and forensic auditors need to work together, right? And again, like it does not have to be auditors. Like any finance professional, like they can get help from or work together with forensic audit. So when when there are red flags, right? So there needs to be a time where auditors and forensic auditors work together to discuss these kinds of red flags, right? So okay, so here is a situation like what kind of tests might make sense at this point to see if the red flags are just red flags, or do is there something more to it, right? Like the smell test that Revati was talking about, right? So
Yeah.
when you get into these kind of situations, it might be best to work together until you get to a point where you either there is a comfort that yeah, okay, the controls are all working properly, but it's just the vacuum that's making it look like there is a red flag, or you're going to be okay, let's work on this together, and if we start to see some inconsistencies, then maybe we get to a point where okay, now this really needs some detailed investigation and we need to get the forensic auditors involved. And on this, I just want to highlight a little bit about how we work in Canada, and this might apply to US context as well. Forensic auditors are often involved in the audit procedures at the early stages when the audit planning is happening, when you do the risk assessment for an organization, right? And we come in as we are called as the audit specialists because we bring in the niche about the fraud side of things, which I think auditors are now are now being made to look into, even as auditors, that professional skepticism part that I was talking about. So we come in as audit specialists. We say, okay, let's look at this together and see if it is really just like a smoke there, or is there something more that we need to look into?
Yeah, so uh, like I have a question coming up. How can early warning signs of financial fraud be identified before a major collapse occurs? Discuss with examples from Satyam Computer Science Services, fake revenues and inflated cash balances, and Sahara India Parivar lack of transparency, and questionable fund collection practices. What role can AI audits, governance, and transaction analytics play in detecting such frauds early?
Yeah, so without getting into specifics of individual cases, like what I can definitely, we all know and we all have
Yeah.
seen, like what was identifiable several years ago versus what we can do now with AI still becoming more and more prominent and part of our day-to-day work is there are more analytics, data analytics that auditors can do, or even forensic auditors, or any, even if you take like a controller position within an organization. So there are basic analytics which can be now done on ground even before it becomes really big, and then there's a forensic auditor involved, right? So uh, some of the basic data analytics that has been embedded already into audit, like when we look at payments, we look at all these red flags about, okay, are there multiple payments going on the weekends and these kind of things on the revenue side. Like there can be so many analytics that can be done just with the information that's flowing. Like, are there inconsistencies between the bank data versus the accounting records, right? So AI can identify these different inconsistencies a lot more quickly. And to speak to that a little bit more, even within our forensic audit or investigations, we have now started actively using AI because they can point us to inconsistencies between structured and unstructured data, and point you to things like, okay, person A in the board report said these things, but if you look at the bank statements or the accounts, there seems to be a mismatch in what's reported to the board versus what you see in the bank statements or the accounting records, right? So leveraging AI can help us detect things that human takes longer to detect or may not even detect. So those are things that we are testing and trying even in our own forensic world now, to see how quickly we can get in front of fraud before it balloons bigger. I mean, like there can be more specific AI analytics that we can speak to, but just given the time here, and so many different processes to look at, I wouldn't go into the details, but I'm happy to provide more details and connect with a person to talk more about this.
Yeah. So, Revti ji, would you like to also comment on this?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting question per
Yeah.
se. And I, apart from what points Pavitra said, and the use of AI, she's absolutely right, and kind of thief into unstructured data. What I would also like to say is that, capital markets are very intelligent as a collective body. So, if you're looking at, one of the pointers that you should use as an early warning signal, what is the yield that their paper is getting? Is it aligned with the rating of the paper or not? And what is the capitalization of the company? Is it aligned with others of similar stature and similar kind of revenue profitability or not? Which will also give you a very good indicator as to how is the market looking at the company, both from an equity as well as a debt perspective. And it doesn't require rocket science or a lot of data analytics to get this number. It's very easy.
Yeah.
That's
So,
it
in the
from my.
interest of time, sorry, I would interrupt. In the interest of time, I'll synthesize the questions from our chat. And it is clear that whether through ratings or audits, our role as CAs is to be custodians of integrity. I want to thank Revti and Pavitra for these invaluable insights. To formally conclude today's sessions, I would like to invite CA Purnima, Chairperson of Michigan Chapter of ICI, to deliver a vote of thanks. Over to you, CA Purnima.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Okay, good.
Purnima ji.
Are we at vote of thanks? Good morning to those joining from us, and good evening to all our participants joining from India around the world. Today, program is truly global in every sense, with speakers, participants, and panelists joining from Australia, across the United States, from Canada, and from India. It's a privilege to witness such an international collaboration around the CA banner. ICAI banner. On behalf of Michigan chapter, the members of industry and business committee, it's my privilege as a chairperson to deliver the vote of thanks for today's insightful webinar on forensic audit and credit rating, strengthening financial integrity and trust of members in industry and business. First and foremost, I extend my deepest gratitude to CA President Kumar D. Prasad, President ICAI, and CA Mangesh Kinnara, Vice President ICAI, for their constant guidance and support. Your leadership continues to inspire members across the globe. A special thanks to you, CA Dr. Anuj Goyalji, Chairman, Member in Industry and Business Committee, for the impactful keynote address. I would also extend our sincere thanks to CA Anita Suneji, Joint Secretary of ICA and Secretary of Member in Industry and Business Committee, for her dedicated coordination and support in making this collaborative event possible. Your efforts behind the scene ensured a smooth and impactful program. Our heartfelt appreciation to our distinguished speakers, Ms. Revati Kasturi and Ms. Pavitra Chandramouli. Your deep insight into forensic audit, credit risk rating, and governance has given us practical perspectives that we can take back to our roles and organizations. The clarity with which you connected technical concepts to real-world scenarios and made this session extremely enriching. I would also like to sincerely thank our moderator, C. Priya Goel, Chairperson Women Members Empowerment Committee, ICI Michigan, for steering the discussion on smoothly and ensuring that the key themes were brought out with such a coherence and engagement. My gratitude extends to members in Industry and Business Committee, the ICI Michigan chapter, and all the volunteers who work tirelessly behind the screens. From planning and coordinating to technology and communication, your efforts has made this virtual event a seamless and impactful. A warm acknowledgement as well to Purva, who has been coordinating all efforts. Your behind the screen works, attention to detail, and timely support ensure that every aspect of this event come together seamlessly. We truly appreciate your commitment. To all our participants from Michigan, across India, US, Canada, and beyond, thank you for the time to join us, your active engagement, and for your commitment to the continuous learning. Your presence and participation are what makes the initiative meaningful.
She's calling your name so many times.
Yes.
Thank you, Purnima. So, a reminder to all the attendees that unstructured CPRs will be uploaded for eligible members who attended the full session. You do not need to claim these manually, and follow-up resources will be sent via email. So, have a wonderful day and evening ahead. Thank you, everyone.